nobody can really explain. I've tried. I mean, I've written 3 books trying to explain to people what it is about a cowboy boot. But it's like anything. Once you've experienced it, you never go back.
There's 3 very important things about a cowboy's attire: his hat, his gun, and his boots.
Don't measure feet when you're drunk. Cowboy wisdom, that's mine.
It's kind of erotic to have naughty things on your boots. Then when you cross your legs, there's a little bit of tulip showing.
People have been obsessed with Western culture. Boots are a part of that. They're a big part of that.
Boots are symbolic, really, of somebody's life. I feel more like myself when I'm wearing boots.
I look at a pair of boots first as an art form anyway.
It's like a caveman painting a buffalo on the wall. Why?
Cowboy boots are all about attitude. Cowboy boots give you a sense of confidence that just other shoes just don't. You walk like you mean it in a pair of cowboy boots.
Boots make you walk differently. They make you stand differently. You don't just walk gradually in boots. You have to walk purposefully.
When you start walking, it's kind of like you better keep moving because you got someplace to go.
To me, walking in a pair of boots is very important, and you just have to have that easygoing way about you.
When you start walking that way, you start exuding a certain power, and men exude power.
Drop those guns. Now take off your boots, both of you.
Women exude sexiness.
I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle, as I go riding merrily along.
It's like, wow, now I can take on the world, I can accomplish this today, I can do that. It gives you, it's a certain form of empowerment.
You know, I grew up in Brooklyn. It was, you know, it's a tough place. So I would come swaggering down the street with my cowboy boots and like, don't mess with me because I have my cowboy boots on.
They made me feel like I was stomping through the streets, that nobody was going to touch me. It was like a holster wearing my boots. It gave me attitude.
It means you can work. It's something that empowers you to work. It's a tool. It's protective clothing. It means you can go out there and do battle, basically, with the elements.
When I step into a pair of cowboy boots, or I see someone step into a pair of cowboy boots, you know, that's what they're going to stand on, and it needs to be firm.
They kind of show you that life can be tough. But when you wear in a pair of cowboy boots, regardless of what they appear to be, they're tremendously comfortable.
It's a comforting, I mean, it's almost a security blanket in the way that when I put on a pair of boots, I feel great, but I feel safe, I feel good.
They cradle you, they belong to you, they're personally yours, you feel that.
People will come in the store having never worn a pair of cowboy boots. They will put them on and start walking around. And it's like you can see a change in their attitude.
A lot of people, you know, it makes them feel like they're reliving something in the Old West. It makes them kind of feel a little rebel.
It's all about authenticity and individuality and creativity and, you know, expressing yourself. And I think bootwear, you know, wearing boots makes you do that better.
Boots are very good for kicking people in the ass, too.
Cowboy boots are art, they're functional art.
You also have people who now regard bootmaking as American folk art or an American art form.
It's art is what you do, Lee. And the fact that people get to wear your art out of the store and it works in their everyday life is a bonus, really.
Most lifelong bootmakers are creating art.
I just think the shape of the boot itself is so intriguing to me, just that look.
A cowboy boot should look like a Coke bottle or a beautiful woman. It's sexy, it's sensual, and you want that shape always.
Certainly, I don't have to put my foot in a stirrup, so the shape is irrelevant in that regard, but they are an art form, and they're very American.
One of the small number of handcrafted goods that still exist in the United States and can trace its history all the way back to the West.
Having collected Navajo rugs a little bit before I was really buying boots heavily, I saw a real parallel between the two art forms as being regional, as being utilitarian, but being incredibly decorative and colorful.
Cowboy boots are instantly recognizable as American, as a friendly, Western cowboy thing. It's not political, it's not anything. It's friendly, it's cowboy, it's hello, here I am, these are my boots.
It's high heels, it's bright colors, it gets to be about your personality. It's such an enduring symbol of America.
It's quintessentially an American thing, for better or for worse. It's that part of our national character that we think of ourselves as that pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, that independent spirit that the West represents to us.
It's sort of a beginning of America sort of feeling, the pioneers coming to America and traveling the lands with the wagons and new frontier country, hope, renewal.
It represents art, and it represents culture, and it represents history, and so many things.
There's always an ongoing debate about whether the first cowboy boot, the debate is, was it done by Hire Boots in Olathe, Kansas, or was it done by Justin Boot Company in Texas?
And Hire whacked the tops off the boots and made them cooler and put different kinds of heels and said, here are your boots, cowboy.
H.J. Justin came to Spanish Fort in 1879 and opened the boot company there, and then stayed there for 10 years. In 1889, he went to Nocona. While they were in Spanish Fort, Annie Justin developed a self-measuring device.
As cowboys moved up and along the cattle trail, they bought boots whenever they had money in their pocket, whether it was the start of the trip or when they got paid in Kansas. So the boot shops sprung up all across the cattle trail.
It wasn't unusual for them to spend a whole month's pay on a pair of boots. It was important to them to have good boots. They'd have to jump out of their saddle to rope a calf, or they had to have their boots to protect their ankles when they're going through briars.
The cowboy boot kind of spun out of necessity for the cowboy, really.
The original boots were simply round toe, straightforward, not very interesting looking boots. They were just for utilitarian purpose.
Just a good oil tanned leather is what they made their first boots from. It was serviceable, it wore well, and it was heavy duty.
Mail order postal delivery boot catalogs were very important in keeping boots in the public eye. As folks moved off the cattle trail onto ranches, the population became very dispersed, and it was a way that bootmakers could reach customers. Customers could dream about their next pair and then have them arrive in the mail.
I mean, in the history of boots as we know them from the trail drives after the Civil War on, there are boots from the 1860s up to, say, the 1920s. It's very rare to find them because they will not necessarily have been preserved. They won't last. When you do find them, they're expensive and they're pretty plain.
Cowboy boot design has really changed over time to match what's going on in America.
When cowboy boots first went from being functional to fashionable, it was really the Wild West shows that started that. The Wild West shows were the predecessors to the rodeos that we all think of today. But from the grandstands, they wanted people to be able to see what they were wearing. Their costumes had to be bright and flashy.
Singing cowboys were a big part of American culture because of radio. And then once radio became TV and the same stars moved into people's homes in a very visual kind of way, cowboy boots was a way that people could feel included in all that.
Some boots, you got to have some boots. Then you'll be living Western style.
Dude ranches were very popular in the 20s, where the women wore their little bloomer skirts, split skirts, and their boots. And they'd have to have 1 or 2 pair of boots to take on their dude ranches.
Then, of course, with the advent of the singing cowboy, Nashville, Western movies, they kind of picked it up from that.
My lost-eared mule, my broken-down horse and me.
And Tom Mix was really the first. I mean, he was the saddle dandy of them all, and he really elevated what people thought of as a flashy cowboy boot.
Following World War II, cowboy boot industry literally was blooming. The rations from the war were over. During the war, you had your choice of black and brown. And once again, all the colors of leather were available. And labor was less expensive than the materials that were being used. So people were taking time to do hand lacing and all this great design work. And it wasn't just cowboy boots. I mean, you see it on automobiles. You see it in women's fashions and suits. You see it even in architecture, just the attention to detail.
I always call the golden age of cowboy boots 1940 to 1965. That 25 years was kind of a quarter century of the most incredible boots being made.
You know, I had a picture of Gene Autry and Champ on my wall, and I loved Roy Rogers, Monty Hale, and Lash LaRue, and all those guys back then.
In the 50s, there were 5 or 6 major boot companies. These boot companies pretty well dominated the over-the-counter market for young kids who were watching Roy Rogers and Gene Autry on television on Saturday morning.
And a lot of us, as little kids, would have had a first pair of boots that probably was red. I know mine were red with little eagles. I think they were Acme's on them. And that would have been a direct tie-in with what I was seeing Roy Rogers wear on TV every day.
I remember my mother calling me in from playing when I was 6 because the Lone Ranger was going to be on, and she knew I'd be upset if I missed it.
I was a wee kid in France watching Roy Rogers on the little black and white TV with the screen about this big. It's about the size of a Texas belt buckle, actually. And I was just, you know, mesmerized by the boots that Roy Rogers was wearing. Everybody had killer boots in there, you know. Roy, Dale, the villains.
I remember always having a pair of cowboy boots. The first pair that I remember clearly was a pair of black boots with a box toe, and they had green tops, almost kind of a turquoise color.
And I've loved cowboy boots ever since I was like 13. I even had a friend who was the only kid in the whole school who actually had a horse, and that's where I got my first pair of boots from him. I traded my slot car set to him for a pair of cowboy boots. My mother was not pleased.
I remember one time having to be sat down in a serious way by my mom, who was having to explain to me that it's just not okay to wear your spurs everywhere. I know I didn't wear my spurs unless I was wearing my boots.
A lot of people have argued that the baby boom generation in America basically wants to buy back its past. It wants to buy back its youth, its misspent youth, or maybe its misspent adulthood. Buying what we remember, what we love, what we identified with.
It was in the 60s and the 70s that you really saw a cultural change. And the boots become the boots of outlaws and rock stars more than Gene and Roy.
The Beatles!
Close your eyes and suddenly after the Beatles arrived and everybody went mod, suddenly cowboy boots were out and people wanted to wear Beatle boots and short boots and lace-up boots and moccasins and fringe moccasins.
The boots of the 1960s and 70s are a much plainer boot. They match the kind of minimalism and kind of return to basics that you saw in some of the hippie movement and design movements of the 70s. The fry boots, the biker boots, the outlaw boots, were simplified designs, heavier design. They're still a Western boot, almost similar to the very early cowboy boots.
This was the 60s, and boots were really popular. And so, yeah, I was living in Rutland, Vermont. All my friends were wearing cowboy boots. We were wearing jeans and cowboy boots. It was part of the culture.
Even in the late 70s, you see family traditions dying off. Custom boot making is not an easy business, and I think all of us worry a little bit that it's going to die out someday. The movie Urban Cowboy helped to update the Western myth.
I've been watching you from across the room.
I've met a lot of people that have never watched a John Wayne movie. They have no interest in anything Western whatsoever, but they may have a pair or two of cowboy boots stuck back in their closet. Since Urban Cowboy, that kind of exposed the world that it was okay to wear cowboy boots.
You have this ebb and tide with bootmakers of being just swamped. If a movie comes out, you know, Silverado comes out, you notice that the fashion industry moves towards that.
You're the kind of girl that makes my country world go round.
People all around the world love Western. They love John Wayne. They love cowboy stuff. There are so many great cowboy kitty pictures from my German customers and the Japanese. They were all cowboy kids too.
It's one of America's greatest exports of the last 100 years. I mean, we've exported jazz, Coca-Cola, hamburgers, blue jeans, and cowboy boots.
I'll go into London, England, and I see people wearing boots. You know, in Switzerland, at the top of St. Moritz, you see people wearing boots.
You can go to Europe now and find people, you know, wearing cowboy boots because they think they're cool.
Well, as long as there's cowgirls like you, there's gonna be cowboys like me.
I always wear boots when I'm traveling because I think people find it so fascinating. It actually turns into a conversation piece with people. And
they wear their boots on a plane. Next thing you know, you've got every stewardess over. Oh my gosh, show her those. Did you see those boots? You know, and they become, people are talking to them now about their boots, and they're meeting new people because of their boots.
People who wear boots notice your boots.
When I walked up and said, "Hey, you're Lyle Lovett, aren't you? I'm Dick DeCaron." He said, "Yeah, I know who you are." And he looked down at my boots and says, "Hey, those are Lee Miller boots." I said, "Yeah, they are." I looked down at his and said, "Those are Lee Miller boots too, aren't they?" I mean, you can spot them. And we've been friends since.
So what you're looking at now, most of what you're seeing in camera here is the boots that were burnt 12 years ago this summer. I had been trying to build a collection that basically had everything in it from the late 20s, early 30s through the mid 60s and maybe a little beyond. When I say everything, I wanted every kind of standard design iconography that you would see in boots of that period in terms of decoration, butterflies, flowers, longhorns, bucking broncos, that kind of thing. But I also wanted all the different makers. And a lot of the boots I had, I never did identify who they were. Then I think it still is the world's biggest collection of vintage cowboy boots. Now it definitely is the world's biggest collection of burnt cowboy boots.
Almost every single person that walks in my store comes in to look at the store, never thinking they will actually walk out with a pair of cowboy boots. And it's amazing how many people walk out with their own custom boot. The rarest boots are the estate collection that were made in 1948. There are 48 states that were made, however, there are only 18 left. And of course, we're looking for the other 30.
It became a collection at the moment I bought a pair that didn't fit me and kept them, as opposed to selling them, because by then I was starting to learn that you could actually sell them and go buy more boots with the profits.
I started wearing cowboy boots in Mexico on a film. It was my first Western, with a film with Burt Lancaster and Shelley Winters and Telly Savalas called the Scalp Hunters, and had a lot of horses and a lot of wranglers down there, and they all had boots on. They all suggested the boots. There were some snakes around there, and there was a lot of tall grass and everything. So I went and bought a pair of boots and didn't expect them to be so comfortable. And once I got them and broke them in, I've been wearing boots ever since. That was 1965.
This is my first pair. They cost, my joke, which isn't a joke, is they cost twice as much as my car. But worth every penny. Yeah, I plan to be cremated and buried in them.
When you meet a fine craftsman who can build a boot that fits your foot in a perfect way, the idea is hard to resist. You know, I want a pair of boots that I can really wear for every day.
Yeah.
But that'll still look nice.
Yeah, I'm thinking the ostrich.
Well,
I mean, that's my opinion.
Most people that buy and wear custom boots love their bootmaker. They have a close relationship with them. They consider them friends.
I love these boots.
It's a startling combination of the black and the white.
Be able to choose the features of your boot, to make all the decisions that you make in getting a pair of boots made is exciting to me. It's fun.
We're going to go ahead and use this last.
For me, it plays into you know, wanting to be creative. It plays into using my imagination, even engaging your sense of adventure and hoping you made the right guess. You know, just making the right choice and then seeing later how you did. It's great fun.
When my first pair of boots, I mean, I had no concept of what it took, what the decisions go into making a pair of boots.
Do you want pull straps? What kind of pull straps would you like?
Stitch patterns, the color of your leather.
Would you like any fancy stitching? How many rows of fancy stitching?
What type of toe do you want? What size of heel? What slant of heel?
Would you like a toe flower?
Initials on the pull straps on the front. I mean, designs. I mean, it's limitless.
All of those things that you sort of don't think about when you go to the store and pick a pair off the shelf.
Most times a bootmaker would want to offer you much advice on color or patterns or colors of thread or kind of inlay because they really want it to be your product. They don't want it or your creation. And they really just want to implement it for you and display their skills in doing that.
The most fun part of the whole deal is just to imagine the boot and then to see then how it turned out.
You know, one of the things that you do, Lyle, is you're always asking me to do something that's a little bit pushing the envelope.
Some bootmakers do actually have a signature that they use, and it's often a little piece of stitching pattern, and it's this little pattern that goes on the back of the boot, on the heel of the boot. And usually other bootmakers will honor that signature and won't copy it.
You know, the feet coming in are just so hard to fit. But then you kind of say, wait a minute, that's what I do. I'm a bootmaker. My job is to fit hard to fit people.
My dad always said it was easier to fit a person's foot than it was their head.
Is you have to fit not only the foot, but the person's mind. You have to go, okay, now how do you want these to fit? And then their conception of what a fit is what you have to deliver as a bootmaker.
Give them a great fit in a pair of boots that will look great. That's, to me, a huge accomplishment. I don't take lightly at all what I do.
Every pair of boots I make is a brand new experience.
It's not really a science, it's more of an art because it's so subjective and, you know, one man's tight is another man's loose.
You can make the most beautiful pair of boots if they rub a toe the wrong way. I failed.
There are these stories about, these old men who've been buying boots for years, and when they go to pick up their boots at the boot maker and they put them on, it takes them 20 minutes to get their foot in, and their face is totally red trying to get their foot in the boot, but it's exactly the fit that they want. And I'm sort of one of those people.
They're a pain in the ass to get off. I spend my life finding these little portable gizmos, boot jacks. If I leave them somewhere, because I'm traveling all the time, I panic.
Cowboy boots kind of make a statement for anybody who's wearing them, and to me, I guess to every individual, it's an individual statement. I guess boots are kind of like temporary tattoos. You can put them on, make a statement, you can take them off, you can change the design whenever you feel like it.
They're really sort of a non-gender fashion item. If you look back at the designs, a lot of guys don't want to admit it, but they were wearing butterflies and flowers and bright colors, and guys love it because, let's face it, they're jealous that women always get to go out and buy all the clothes and all the different shoes and different styles and colors.
I truly feel that the reason cowboy boots are enduringly popular is because they're a socially acceptable way for men to wear high heels and bright colors.
And for a lot of people, especially that have to dress conservatively at work, the cowboy boot is the last thing that's going to get looked at if someone's giving them the searchlight up and down, and they're going to look at the cowboy boot last. And a lot of people love that. It's their little freak flag they get to wear on their feet.
My favorite kinds of boots probably reflect my personality a little bit, which is fancy on the top and kind of plain on the bottom. I love the fact that I can wear something that I think is pretty outrageous, hidden under my pants.
The boots give you a chance to sort of have a hidden canvas.
I'm always the first one that says, what do your tops look like? And they pull up their pants leg. And
it's an undergarment almost. It's hidden. So that's something that you can share quietly on your own when you're pulling your pants down. It's kind of erotic to have naughty things on your boots that nobody else knows about.
You can go anywhere from the plainest black boot or rough out or work cowboy boot, to the most extreme fashion boot. And I think that people have finally accepted that cowboy boots can really be worn anywhere with anything at any time.
We're finding that we have customers that are coming in who want to match their Hermes handbags with a pair of cowboy boots.
I think there's a great chain reaction to when people see what true boots are all about and what can be done with boots. Boots with a pair of jeans, does it get any better than that?
Cowboy boots never go out of style. When a person puts on their cowboy boot, it's just a fun fashion statement.
I think that boots make people feel sexy. I think it's very elegant. I think they can be sexy. I think they can be worn with shorts. They can be worn with skirts. They can be worn with jeans. They're very versatile. Be worn with nothing.
There's nothing more sexy than a pair of cowboy boots. How many men are you going to see in suit and dress shoes? That's boring. But if you see a man in a suit and cowboy boots, you're going to look.
Woman in boots is a sexy thing. I don't know why, but it is.
And there's some kind of magical, mystical, weird sex appeal about cowboy boots that appeal to both sexes.
Cowboy boots are very sexy on a man. Absolutely. And some good tight jeans wouldn't hurt anything either.
A woman will come in and try on a pair of boots and start walking around. All the men will just stop and watch her walk.
Many people I know, once they buy a pair of boots, they're addicted.
They come back and they've got to try a different baker, a different style.
I wear boots all the time. I wear boots in court. I wear boots when I'm not in court. I wear boots in trial or when I'm not in trial. I wear boots at the office. I wear boots with suits, boots with jeans. I wear boots.
Because it is only through enlightenment that this scourge can be wiped out.
You could argue that to the extent that the boot itself is flashy and evocative, it wants you to become a fanatic. It's asking you, it's pleading, it's demanding, it's begging, it's screaming at you.
Hey, how do you like that? That's the one I was telling you about. Very nice.
Whether you want to buy in or not is up to you.
I don't know how to explain it. There's just something about them. Once you get used to them, once your feet get used to them, you get used to walking in them, I don't feel that comfortable in anything else.
When I ordered that first pair of boots, I immediately have always had the feeling that too much is not enough.
When I started going out trying to find just the boots I needed to get through my life, really started paying attention to it and fell in love with them. But you could argue I was already in love with them, I just didn't know it until I couldn't get it anymore. And in that regard, it's like an addict's story. I didn't know I was hooked until suddenly they took it away. And I needed it, and I couldn't find it. And like most addicts, I became a dealer to finance my habit.
Because I believe in complete honesty that I'm really sorry, but this is addictive, you know. Yeah, once you start, then, you know, you got to have your black pair and your brown pair and your pair to just kind of run around the backyard and your pair to go dancing. And
when you're dealing with cowboy boots, there's never enough. There's always different color, different style. There's never enough.
I think about them morning, noon, and night, and I probably dream about them.
And then when you get into it, it's like, okay, you got that pair. Oh, they're beautiful, they're great. But then you're like, start thinking about the next pair.
I just built this really great pair of boots for a contest, and they were wonderful, and I was so pleased with them. And as soon as I got them finished, I went, oh, here's something new I can do with this design. And so now I'm totally excited about the next pair, and I've moved on from that pair, which was so exciting at the time.
I'll tell you how you know you're really addicted to a pair of boots is when you order a pair of boots. When I order a pair of boots, it takes a while before I get them. I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about these pair of boots arriving at the house.
I used to go pawn the family guns in order to go buy more boots. For instance, you know, I pawned my Land Cruiser one time to buy more boots.
I mean, I have too many boots. If that's the idea, I suppose I have more boots than I should have.
I have a lot of family and friends, and when they see my boot collection, they're extremely impressed, and they all think I'm crazy.
You know, if you've got a really good pair of boots that were made for you, they're your old friends.
It gets hard to throw them away. That's the biggest problem.
I have a pair of old boots that I wore for 1,000 years. I wore a hole through the bottom of the sole like 3 times. I had to retire them, so I put vases inside, and I put flowers in them.
There's a book written by Tyler Beard and Jim Arndt, the Cowboy Boot Book, that came out in the late 80s, and that did a lot to revive the art. It captured the history, the life histories of the bootmakers that were still making boots, and it was their stories and their work that inspired a whole new crop of bootmakers.
I personally think it's one of the most complicated things of clothing that you can make. Because, you know, there's no laces to tie it up and make it fit. You know, there's no zipper. It's more or less a negative of your foot.
Work hard at it. Take your time on every step that you do. Try to create the most perfect boot in the world, which will never happen. But try. And as long as you try, and you put your heart into every pair, the love that it takes to make them, then that's where you're going to get your satisfaction.
I mean, I'm all about the special crafted item that someone made especially for you. Just like a meal, a wonderful home-cooked meal instead of a TV dinner or something that came out of a frozen package. Those are the things that we're losing, so those are the things I tend to grasp more toward.
My bootwear collection is absolutely inspired by my life, my childhood, growing up in South Texas, and being introduced to the art and the craft of bootmaking.
The ad said stitching boot tops, and that sounded like sewing to me, so I applied. The old bootmaker, his name was Jay Griffith, and I called him and said, I want to come up and apply for this job because I can sew clothing. And he griped and cussed and told me it was nothing at all like sewing boot tops, and I was wasting my time, and I went up there and applied anyway and got the job.
There's very little science in this. It's all finesse. It's all what have you learned while you've been doing it.
I spent my life trying to do something else, but, you know, it just kept pulling me back. So I finally, you know, faced my destiny and just, okay, that's what I'm meant to do.
I didn't know what boots were really when I went into that shop, but I remember sitting there and thinking, this is what I want to be. And it wasn't really like discovering what I wanted to be. It was more like discovering who I had been all along. I just didn't know it.
I love every pair of boots that I make, but if they stay in my shop too long, I want to kick them out. And I sometimes tell folks, give me a call and tell me how the boots are doing, as though I'd say, well, you've got my kid now, call me or send them over and let me see them once in a while, you know.
And it's very important that I feel like they're going to a good home, that someone will love them and take care of them.
I don't really see, you know, myself having to stop. I can do that until my dying breath. Some poor schmuck's gonna be left with a half-finished project.
The thing I'm happiest about is that there are so many men and women still out there making cowboy boots. And every time I think that there's going to be a lull in the market, it rises once again. Cowboy boots come to the surface through high fashion, and high fashion trickles down to the masses. And that's great, but the people who have always worn cowboy boots, their families have always worn cowboy boots, will always wear cowboy boots.
There's just something about the mystique that people just love. And I think it's timeless. I don't think it will ever go away.
And then there will always be the diehards who don't care if it's in or out. We're going to wear them anyway.
There's something primeval about the smell of the leather, the look of the leather. It's tactile, it's sexy. Again, it's inexplicable, but that's one of the wonderful things about cowboy boots. Nobody, even myself, after 3 books, it's still a mystery to me.
Those dirty old beat-up cowboy boots are what they're looking for. They want a man who works real hard. They don't care if he's poor. 'Cause he's a man with some dignity, and he likes a 2-step to enjoy. What every woman can see from a mile is a real cowboy. Doesn't matter what you do for a living, everybody's working real hard. To be out riding fences, or out on the road, or playing on stage in a bar. Look out! Everybody's digging the music, and everybody's singing along. But what a woman can see in a hard-working man are the boots that he's got on. Those dirty old beat-up cowboy boots are what they're looking for. They want a man who works real hard. They don't care if he's poor. 'Cause he's a man with some dignity, and he likes a 2-step to enjoy. What every woman can see from a mile is a real cowboy. Here we go, boys. That's right. For. They want a man who works real hard, and they don't care if he's poor. 'Cause he's a man with some dignity, and he likes a 2-step to enjoy. What every woman can see from a mile is a real cowboy. What every woman can see from a mile is a real cowboy. What every woman can see from a mile is a real cowboy.